Let's talk about last year for a second. I mentioned this moment to you right before the interview. I got to throw it back to the NLCS Game 6. Luke Jackson, who we just mentioned, has a rare struggle for last year. 2 runners on, second and third, 7th inning, in Game 6 against the Dodgers.
The greatest setup man ever here. You know, like sometimes your struggles make some people great, and Tyler doesn't thank me enough for putting him in such a great situation with second and third no outs. But he stepped up, and probably the 3 biggest strikeouts I think of the whole playoff run. And
you come out, you not only face, you have no outs with runners on, but you face 3 righties. I was there. I know what the stadium was like. I've never seen it quite like that before that, and I don't know that I'll ever see it like that since. Walk me through coming out of the pen.
Yeah, I was out there in the pen. I said, hey, Matt, so you're kind of going to cover Luke, so kind of just be ready, moving around. I said, okay, sounds good. And then I saw Luke getting into a little bit of trouble. And so I turned it on in the pen, and, I just wanted to get out there and help Luke. I knew that he was struggling a little bit, just didn't have it that night. And then I was feeling pretty good, so I was like, hey, let me at him. I want to get out there. I want to go and help my boy who's struggling right now. So they call me in, and, in that situation, runners on second and third, the first out is the most important one. We get a first out, it frees up, being able to walk, set up a double play, that whole thing. And the best way to do that, get that first out, was to get a strikeout.
I don't want to overlook who you struck out. Number one being Albert Pujols, who's, at the tail end of his career, but is having a monster year this year. But a legendary hitter. Souza, and then, of course, Mookie Betts.
It's one of those things that you'll remember for the 2021 World Series. That inning, those plays, those outs, all huge.
I mean, that's one of those moments that you can't replicate unless it happens this year, of course. But, again, just a great moment. And, did you know then that this team, was going to win the World Series? Is that when you knew, or was it later?
When we still had to win that game. I think getting past the Dodgers was a huge task for us. They'd stopped us the year before. But yeah, once we were able to shut down that inning, we trusted. I was able to go back out and get another, an solid eighth inning, and I felt like we were in a good position to win. Will came out, did his thing, and off to the World Series we went.
baseball fans. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Good evening and welcome into On Deck. Thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. While you're here, do me a favor, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on here at On Deck and, of course, with your Atlanta Braves. And let's talk about these Atlanta Braves for a second, because if it's my opinion, I would have to say that I think that the Braves are by far the hottest team in baseball. They've won 18 out of their last 21 games, and that, of course, is as of tonight. They have won 18 out of their last 21 by beating the Twins tonight. And guys, the offense has been off the charts. They have 54 homers in June. The Braves' record for that is 56. They have a few games left to top that. And I mean, I think when I say they're the hottest team in baseball, a lot of people like to throw other teams at me. And I'm all for that. I'm all for comparing and contrasting the different seasons. But when you look at the standings, when you look at the stats, there is no team that represents the hottest team in baseball like the Atlanta Braves. And I think that sells itself when you look at the All-Star voting, because we already know that Ronald Acuna is already solidified for the All-Star game. He will be the starting outfielder for the National League, at least according to Phase 1. Phase 2 is still going, and these are some of the other Braves that are being considered. Of course, Sean Murphy at catcher. He is basically competing with Will Smith on the All-Star ballot. For first base, Matt Olson and, of course, longtime Brave Freddie Freeman are going head-to-head for that spot. Second base is Ozzie Albies and Luis Arias. Shortstop, Orlando Arcia, who I have to tell you just makes me smile that he's on the All-Star ballot, or Francisco Lindor. For third base, you have Austin Riley or Nolan Arenado. For the outfield, Michael Harris and Mookie Betts, Corbin Carroll, and Lourdes Gurriel, and of course at DH, JD Martinez and Bryce Harper. But a lot of Braves. You have 6 Braves that are still competing to make it to the All-Star game, with one already in it, not to mention pitchers. So if that just tells you how prolific the offense is, and I mean, you can make an argument for the defense as well. I think it says a lot that so many Braves are in the All-Star game. By the way, if you haven't yet, you need to go vote for your Atlanta Braves or whatever team you represent. But for here, we're talking about the Atlanta Braves. Also, tonight, I mean, if you needed any more proof about this offense, they hit 5 homers tonight before 10 batters had gone through the lineup. I think that says a lot, and I think we're going to see more examples like that as the season goes on. And I think as we're talking about the Braves, there's one guy in particular that I really want to focus on tonight, and that's Ronald Acuna Jr. And we talk about Ronald Acuna a good bit. I mean, rightfully so. Ronald Acuna has been a star player for the Braves for a long time now. Acuna is now the first ever player to hit 35 stolen bases and 40 extra base hits before July. I think you have to just realize how special this time and this player is that we are seeing. And as we watch him, you have to realize just how unique he is. That leads me to talking about the MVP conversation. And I know it's early. I know we're not even through the first half of the year, but I wanted to talk about this. Right now, I think there are 3 guys in for the MVP conversation. One being Ronald Acuna Jr. The other 2 being Luis Arias and Corbin Carroll. Now, the argument for Acuna is this. He has the highest WAR in anyone in the National League. He has the most stolen bases. He is leading in slug percentage. He is leading in OPS. He is leading in runs scored. He is basically in the top 2 or 3 of any offensive category that matters. He's also playing great defense, and we all know how much of a weapon he is on the base pass. The argument for Luis Arias is pretty much that he is flirting with 400. And, of course, if you don't know, hitting 400 has not been done since 1941. So I'm not taking anything away from Luis Arias. I think he has got a legit candidacy for the MVP if he continues to do what he has done all year long. And for the first half of the season, it doesn't look like he's going away. He also is leading in on-base percentage, 451 there. The argument for Corbin Carroll is a rookie. He has 16 homers. His defense is stellar. and he's hitting 290. I think he's a solid number 3 there. He'd have to have a great second half of the season for me to really believe that he is a legit contender for the MVP. I think the top 2 spots in the National League right now are Ronald Acuna and Luis Arias, and we'll see how the season goes. But I think for these 2 guys, what you really want to talk about is where their teams are. And, of course, the Braves remain in first place, and that's not because the NL East is bad. We can talk about that in just a second. It's because the Braves have been performing at a rate that cannot be followed. The Marlins have played excellent baseball these past few weeks, and they have not gotten any ground on the Atlanta Braves. It's very similar, the opposite, really, of what the Braves were doing last year. The Mets had a 10.5 game lead, right? But the Braves were playing so good. The Mets didn't play bad. The Braves just played better. That's, in a flipped sense, that's essentially what's going on, because it's not like the Marlins are playing bad baseball. That's not why they're in second place. It's because the Braves are playing just that good. And I do think the Marlins have a lot to offer. I think they have a great team, and I think they're only going to get better over the next few years. But I also think that the Braves have been built for this for a long time, and I think that's essentially what's going on. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about tonight, other than the Braves being the hottest team in baseball, I want to talk about the rest of the NL East. Because if you look at the NL East, and I wish I had the standings where I could just pull them up tonight, the standings say a lot because, and we're going to dig into this right now, the standings say a lot because not only are the Braves in first place, they have a 6.5 game lead over the Marlins. The Phillies, they have an 11 game lead over. The Mets, they have a 16 game lead over. And the Nationals have a 21.5 game lead over. Now, the reason I bring this up is simply because look at the different payrolls. So let's start with that. This is every payroll in Major League Baseball. Of course, there's a staggering, obvious what I'm going to right here. The Mets, number 1. Of course, the A's, number 30. 2 very different teams there. The average is about $155 million, okay? 16 and below is below average payroll, all right? When you look at the top 5 teams, none of them are in first place. None of them. Not number 6. Not until you get to number 7 do you see a first place team. That, of course, being the Atlanta Braves. Why do I bring this up, you ask? Well, things are going pretty bad in New York right now. And I'm not saying this to rub it in. I'm saying this to prove a point. When this is the front cover of their newspaper, it says a lot. The worst half money can buy. Things are disastrous for New York. And some people are going to say, well, it's because Edwin Diaz is not there. No, you have far deeper issues. It's because you're paying $82 million to 2 40-year-olds. Now, a lot of people were worried when those 2 signed deals. Of course, I'm talking about Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. A lot of Braves fans, a lot of fans in general, were a little bit worried, hey, the Mets really might make a move this year. They really may push it over the limit because they're bringing in these 2 guys that are just going to be on fire. But that's the thing. That's the risk you take with age. And I don't believe, and I've said this for a long time, I don't believe you can buy chemistry. And if you don't believe me, take a look at the payroll again. Number 2 payroll, Padres. Guys, they have the number 2 payroll in baseball, and they have not really been competitive in the past couple of seasons in terms of winning the division. They got into that arms race with the Dodgers a few years ago, but since then, it's really just been all talking points. And if you're wondering where the Padres are in the standings, they're currently in 4th place, only above the Rockies in the NL West. The Dodgers are in 3rd. The Giants, who are number 10, they're in 2nd place, behind the Diamondbacks, who have the 20th payroll in baseball. Payrolls do not always immediately spell out success. And I think a lot of fans that hear, oh, they got the biggest payroll in baseball, it doesn't necessarily translate to success. For years, the Yankees were by far the number 1 payroll in baseball because they could be, right? They absolutely could be. But even the Yankees have realized that just because you're the biggest payroll in baseball doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win. And if that doesn't say something to you, look at this payroll again. Number 21, the Yankees. I don't know that I ever would have thought the Yankees would be in the bottom third of the payroll across Major League Baseball. But when you keep giving to a product that's not heeding results, no matter who you bring in, Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge is there. They have a lot. But when you can't get results, it doesn't matter. That's why I believe they're in the lower third of the payroll. I think they'll soon build around what they have right now. Of course, they signed Aaron Judge to a big-time deal, but I think they're going to have to build around that. I think they're preparing to do that. The Yankees certainly have the cash to make that happen. But when you look at the standings and you look at the payroll, it's pretty staggering. It really is, because the Brewers are in the middle of the road, right? They're in second place, okay? They're the 19th payroll. The Reds are in first place of their division. Where are they at? They are number 25. So I just want you to realize it doesn't always spell out success. And one more I want to mention, the Tampa Bay Rays, who have the best record in baseball, and it's not close. First place in the AL East, 54-27. They're number 28th. They have the third, if you want to call it, worst payroll in baseball. So again, it doesn't always, mean success when you have a big payroll. The Mets, I think, are learning that. The Phillies, I think, are learning that. And again, I'll say this, I don't believe you can buy chemistry. I think the Padres proved it. I think the Mets are in the process of proving it. And also, just because you have a big payroll, it doesn't mean you're going to, even if you are successful for a short time. I pointed out the Phillies. The Phillies were in the World Series last year. But where are they now? They're in third place. Could they find themselves in the postseason later this year? Sure. Could they find themselves in the World Series later this year? Possibly. But it doesn't spell out long-term success and guaranteed success. What does spell out long-term success, and I would even say guaranteed success, is what the Braves have done, because they're not dependent on one player, Bryce Harper, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer. They're not dependent on those guys because they have a unit. And if you need proof of that, look at what the Braves have dealt with this season and look at how easy it seems they've done it. They are out Max Fried and Kyle Wright. And to some teams, that might not sound like much. But to any Braves fan, they will tell you Max Fried, at least, is the ace of the team. Kyle Wright, arguably number 2. Definitely in the starting 5 without a doubt. They're down those 2 pitchers, and they've been able to have the best record in the National League East. Not only that, they've been able to have the best record in the National League, period. And that's largely due to the offense, overcoming any pitching struggles they may have. I'll give you that. But they have been able to rely on other guys to perform when those guys can't. And I think it says a lot about them. Now, that said, they do have some concerns. And let's talk about that for a second. Max Fried and Kyle Wright, we just mentioned it. They were caught throwing pitcher fielding practice before today's game. So I did want to point that out. That is a step in the right direction. Of course, Fried has been out since May 5th. Wright has been out since May 3rd. The next step for Fried, this is according to Braves manager Brian Snitker, is to throw to live hitters. The next step for Wright is really just a progression of long toss. They want to make sure these guys are healthy. Timeline remains the same. What that means to me is this. I don't believe that they are going to be back prior to the trade deadline or prior to the All-Star break, whatever you want to call it. I mean the All-Star break, let me rephrase. I don't believe they're going to be back before that. Why? Because they only have 5 games and they've played pretty well without them. I just don't think they're going to risk that. I do think another week or 2 into the All-Star break, that time frame, they very well could be back shortly thereafter, and I think that would be the right move. A guy that we all thought would be back on Wednesday, a guy that missed his start today, was Michael Soroka. He was the guy that everybody was saying, hey, this is what seems to be where the Braves are going. He missed his start today, and he's pitched very well. He had, I think, almost a no-hitter through like 7 innings the other day. Michael Soroka. That would have been versus the Guardians. That's really what I was prepared to come on and tell you today. Of course, we find out later that it will be Colby Allard, and that is confirmed. The unpaid intern Jacob just confirmed it for me. It will be Colby Allard on Wednesday versus the Guardians. This is interesting. I do believe this is Colby's first MLB appearance this season. If it's not, he hasn't had many. But I do believe it is his first. He's been with the Braves a few years. I actually met him a few years ago back in spring training. And he's had a long road. He's been to Texas. He's come back to the Braves. He's really had a long road. So as much as we're all rooting for Michael Soroka, and I 100% get that and support it, I also want us to realize that this is a chance for Colby Allard to maybe make a return himself and maybe a return to what he was projected to be some years ago. Either way, the offense has been hitting so well that if you're worried about Colby Allard taking them out, don't be. Honestly, it's one game, and I don't think it's going to be just the end of the world. We'll see, but I think it's actually kind of exciting to see Colby Allard. I don't know how many games that they have before the All-Star break. Jacob, if you can look that up for me and just see how many more games we have. I think this is game 79. If I'm not mistaken, based on their record, I think it's game 79. Quick math. But they only have a few more series. I actually will be at Sunday's game if you are there. So make sure you look around for me. If you are there, I'd love to say hello, and I'd love to talk to you about baseball if I can. And I'll have nowhere else to be. So make sure to come see me if you do see me at the park. And I really will be glad to see you. That being said, let's talk about what you guys want to talk about. We have the unpaid intern, Jacob, in the house tonight. And he is here to look up any quick research I need or whatever the case may be. What's up?
The All-Star starts on... The All-Star game is July 11th.
The All-Star game is July 11th, so we only have 2 weeks before the All-Star break. So it's coming up soon. We'll see what's going on with that. But Max Fried and Kyle Wright will hopefully be back shortly thereafter. Sean Sports Card says, we're clicking on all cylinders. Let's go. I really think we are. Even tonight, and this will tell you kind of where I'm feeling on this. Tonight, when they scored a run in the first, okay, I literally said this. All right, well, the offense will score 8 runs. They didn't quite score 8, but they did score 6. And that kind of tells you where my mindset is. And really, whatever the pitchers do, it's not going to make me feel like early on, I'm not worried because I know this offense and I know how it's been hitting. And right now, I don't think there's a better offense in baseball. The Red Series was a great series, phenomenal series. The energy at that park for a regular season series was staggering, in large part due to Ellie De La Cruz, and I think we all need to give him the credit there. He has been great, and it's really a great thing to see. I have a lot of friends up in Cincinnati. Daryl Cheney, who was on the 75 World Series team for them, is a good friend of mine. So the Reds are one that I like to keep an eye on. But it was a great series, and I really think the offense had a coming out party. And I think that hopefully we can see more of that coming from the Reds. One guy that I do want to focus on that I don't think gets enough credit is Orlando Arcia. Now, Orlando Arcia, of course, is on the All-Star ballot, but he's a guy that a lot of people weren't really looking forward to seeing this year. And I think he's a guy that gets drastically overrated. I know he had, or underrated. I know he had a couple of errors tonight, but the guy has been absolutely great. His average entering today was like 319. I was like, man, that seems low compared to what Orlando's been doing all year. But this is a guy, and if you're going to vote for anybody, I think this is the guy you got to vote for. When you look at what he's making year to year, a couple of million, versus someone who, is doing anything competitive statistically is a steal for the Braves, really. So I did want to point that out as well. I know you guys are talking about Soroka. Of course, it's going to be Colby Allard. I think we've established that. Let's see. Brandon Johnson says, nice win for the Braves. Matthew Brittingham, hey, Tyler, did you see Gary Sheffield said Ohtani will want to come to the Braves? Chef said this young, long-term core is so good for Ohtani, couldn't turn down the opportunity to be a part of it and win. All right. If that's true, I'm all for getting Shohei Ohtani. However, do realize Shohei Ohtani, if he wants to be a part of the long-term core and win, is going to have to take a long-term, non-expensive deal. And I think we can all agree with that. The Braves, I just showed you the payroll. They're not looking to be in that number one. They might be looking to be in that top 5. They're not looking to be in that number one. I just don't believe it, and I don't think they're going to put all their cards in one guy. It's not the way they operate. It's just
And to be honest with you, if there's an old-fashioned team in baseball, it's kind of the Braves. I don't know that they're going to necessarily go all out for a guy who pitches and hits. I just don't necessarily see it. I don't think that's their mold. I could be wrong. I just don't think that's the way they operate. I've said that before. I think I've been pretty consistent on it. If Gary Sheffield's saying it, who knows? But I also would be weary and not just take Sheffield's take as fact. I think this is what Sheffield is saying. I don't think it's what Ohtani is necessarily saying. I think Ohtani's going to want a big check. I really do. And I think there's only a few teams that can give him what he wants. Does that mean he's only about money? Not necessarily. But there's a lot of teams that he could go to and potentially win. The Dodgers are one. The Yankees, if they build right, could be, along with Aaron Judge. And if he adds a pitcher and a hitter to that lineup, I think you're really talking about something special. And that rotation, might I say. There's a lot of teams that I think he could go to and be competitive. The Rays, not that they're going to pay him, but there's a lot of teams that he could go to be competitive. But what you're saying, there is some truth to it, because when it comes to this team, there is a lot of young core. Acuna being part of that, Arcia now being part of that, Ozzie Albies being part of that, Olsen being part of that, Riley being part of that, Acuna being part of that. There's a ton. Even Fried, if he stays around, right? Soroka. There is a ton of guys that are part of the long-term core. I think any free agent would want to come to Atlanta, but I also think they're going to take into the fact that, hey, I can make $200 million across 10 years in Atlanta, or I could go to the Dodgers and make $500 million. And if you think $500 million is like, oh, Tyler, he's never going to make that. Juan Soto got offered that. It wasn't accepted, which I think was a fatal flaw on Juan Soto's part in terms of money making. But that's where we're at in baseball now. And if you don't think Shohei Ohtani isn't going to demand a hefty price, I think you're fooling yourself. And I just don't see the Braves doing it. If they do it, I'll be the first one lined up to go buy an Ohtani jersey. Okay? I'm all in. But I just don't think they're going to do it. And as special as Shohei Ohtani is, I don't think he's worth $600 million. I don't think anybody's worth $600 million. I just don't. I don't think anybody can live up to that. And it never seems to work out, not long term. Pujols had a great finish to his career, right? But he signed that big-term deal with the Angels and was not the player he was with the Cardinals. I think we can all realize that. Miguel Cabrera signed a long-term deal, was not the same player he was for the last 5 years, and still isn't. And all due respect to these guys, they're great, but they're not what they used to be. And it's just that simple. I think if you're going to sign somebody long-term, you have to get it for an acceptable price. I think Matt Olson's deal is perfect. I think Austin Riley's deal is perfect. Acuna's deal is a steal. I think we're all aware. Ozzie's deal is a steal. But that's the way the Braves operate. They don't operate like this. They just don't. And if they do, if they all of a sudden decide, hey, we're going to throw all our chips in, we're going to go get Ohtani, then by all means, great. But I also know they're owned by Liberty Media. I just don't think it's going to happen. But good question. If Sheffield's right, then I'll be happy. I just don't see it happening. Thank you for that, though. Vision says, I will be directing my 4th, 5th grade chorus students from DeKalb County singing the national anthem tomorrow at the game. Vision, that is awesome. That is absolutely awesome. So you will be at the game directing your 4th to 5th grade chorus students from DeKalb County. Well, they need to know that they have an on-deck subscriber in the house on the field, and make sure to try to meet as many players as possible. That is really cool, and I didn't know you were a teacher. I guess I should have by your name, but I didn't. But thank you for everything you do. I know that's not the easiest job, and I really do appreciate it, and I hope you have a great time tomorrow. Really do. Let's see. Blake says, you can always count on the Braves being the best team in baseball in June yearly. Yeah, the June swoon's pretty good for the Braves. It does well. Scooter Puff says, okay, so after the past couple of weeks of baseball, we all agree the Braves are at minimum getting to the series this year, right? I don't think that's as much as that's a joke. Yeah, we know they're getting to the World Series. As much as it's a joke, it's also, you have to realize, it's their expectation. It's not a like a over exaggeration to say, well, the expectation is to get to the World Series. You expect it, I expect it, the team expects that. And I know that's kind of cliche. Every team walks in the door in spring training. We're going to go to the World Series. We're going to win the World Series this year, right? But for the Braves, who have a legit chance to do it, they've already done it a couple of years ago. They have a legit chance to do it. This is the best Braves team I think I've ever seen in terms of just the way they're hitting. And that being said, I was born in '99, so don't hold the 90s against me. I'm just saying this is the best team throughout the lineup, through the rotation, especially when they get Fried and right back. This very well may be the best team I've seen. In terms, because even in 2021, when they won the World Series, they weren't that team until the postseason, really. In a lot of ways. They kind of caught fire like the Phillies did last year. Granted, we got to win, but that's what I mean. They kind of caught fire. They were it was the right time for them. This team is a juggernaut. This team is meant to win. And they're just as intimidating as the Dodgers were a few years ago, if you remember watching those series. I mean, I think they are by far the best Braves team I have seen play as a unit if they can keep this up for the year. Certainly for the first half of the year, they've been awesome. I know we got some super chats and I'm missing them. Captain Spartan says, when and what are we trading for Drew Jones, future left fielder? Vision says thank you as well. No problem, Vision. So let's talk about Drew Jones for a second. As you all know, if you don't know, I am a big Andrew Jones supporter. I've thought for years that the Braves need to retire number 25. I thought it's ridiculous that it took this long. No one's going to top him in center field for the Braves. I just don't think so. I could be wrong. We'll see. But the guy's got a decade of Gold Gloves, 400 homers. I think his number should have been retired a long time ago. That said, I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame too. But in terms of his son, I've heard a lot about him, and I've talked to Andrew about him. And this is what I'll say: I think he has all the potential in the world. I think the Diamondbacks are going to hold on to him, and based on what the Diamondbacks are doing right now and how young they are, it's only going to get better. So we'll see how it goes, but I don't think we're trading for him, unfortunately. As much as I would love it, I just don't think so. Maybe in like 10 years, but it will be after he gets to free agency. Let's see. Matthew says, sorry. I'm missing a few of you guys. It says, Chris Casey says, what a Truist Park giveaway night. Acuna Jr. With the gold chain plus a 2-homer night. I didn't even think about that. It is his giveaway night. Yeah, absolutely. Base Omen says, Matt Olson to the home run derby. Yeah. I mean, if he wants to be in it, I think he's going to be in it. And hopefully he can win it. That would be great. He's tied for the most homers in baseball unless Shohei Ohtani hit one tonight. Did Olsen get one tonight? I don't know. He didn't. Sorry. A lot of homers tonight. But Shohei, unless he hit one time, I don't think he did. They're still tied at 25 for the most homers in baseball, which is a very exciting thing to witness right now. We'll, of course, hope that continues. Let's see. Matthew says, Tyler, I think Olsen has taken over Freeman as the all-star first baseman. You have to start the league leader in home runs. Murphy, Arcia, and Acuna are locks too. I think Strider, Elder, and Chavez go too. Chavez is hurt still, isn't he? Okay. Chavez is hurt. I don't know what his condition is currently. I don't know how long it's going to be before he's really back. So in terms of all-star game, I don't know, and it's really unfortunate because I thought the same thing. In terms of Murphy, I agree. In terms of Arcia, I agree. Acuna is already in. And in terms of Olsen over Freeman, it's a give and a take. Freeman's had a pretty good year too. He's not leading in homers, but that's not really Freddie's game. He's an average guy, and his average is really good. I know as a Braves channel, with the history, we all want to say Olsen over Freddie, but it's tough. That said, there was one more I wanted to comment on, I think. Strider, I think, could have a chance, more so than Elder. If Elder is Elder still the NL ERA leader? I don't think so anymore.
He's like second or third.
Okay, he's like second or third. Yeah, I don't think he is anymore. If he was, I think he'd have a legit argument. I don't know if it's as legit now. Pitchers are a little different. It's going to be tough. But I think that with Olsen and Freeman, I agree with you. The guy that has the most homers should be in the All-Star game. But I also would say don't be so sure that it's going to happen. Guys, before we go any further, please do me a favor. Like the video. There's a lot of you guys watching out there. Please make sure to like the video. It helps the channel grow. It helps really get the stream out there to other Braves fans, and we really would appreciate it. Jorge says, hey, Tyler, the Braves are the best team in baseball. Watching this team is so fun. I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to say it again. About a week ago, I said something along the lines to someone about the Braves being, quote, the hottest team in baseball, okay? And I said that with confidence because I feel like they are. And I got questioned, and a couple other teams were pointed out to me, and I took it all into consideration, and I just didn't feel the same energy with them. And for the record, I watch a lot of teams. I don't just watch the Braves. I kind of keep an eye on everybody best I can. But I don't think there's another team that really fits this energy. The way the offense is hitting, the way they're dealing with the injuries right now with Fried and Wright, I just don't think there's another team that really matches this energy, and I'll defend that over anything. And I'm the first one to tell you if the Braves are stinking it up, okay? I'm the first one to go, what are we doing, right? But I don't really have a reason to right now. They've been great. Through every challenge, through every obstacle, they've been great. And I think it says a lot about not only the team, but also the coaching staff. Brian Snitker at the helm and Walt Weiss and everybody else. I think it says a lot about them. You know, the fact that they're able to lead like this and continue to be successful through the challenges. Of course, we all know how I feel about Ron Washington. Today we had a very rough defensive game, okay? There were a few errors. I think there was at least 4 errors in the game. That said, and before anybody asks me this, do I think this is going to be a lasting issue? If you've met Ron Washington, you know it's not going to be a lasting issue. They will respond accordingly tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if there were no errors in the game at all tomorrow, because that's standard for the Braves. Today was weird. Orlando had an error early in the game that he otherwise would get, and there was just a few that I was, bad news bears, essentially. But I don't think it's going to be a lasting issue. I think Ron Washington is going to be given some extra infield practice tomorrow, and we'll be back to normal before you know it. Matthew says, Tyler, did you notice who is third in National League designated hitter voting? It's d'Arnaud. How is d'Arnaud ranked ahead of Ozuna at DH of all positions? Well, for the most of the year, he's been used as DH, especially early in the year. Ozuna's been great here lately, especially since May. I think he has a 304 average entering play today since May. But at the beginning of the season, d'Arnaud was really the guy that they went to for DH. And because Ozuna had such a bad start, that could be why. Also, d'Arnaud really hasn't caught that much until Sean Murphy got hurt. In terms of why is he above Ozuna, it's, because fans are voting. That's why. That's why when people are like, how is so-and-so not in it? Fans are voting. Last year, I thought Austin Riley should have been in the All-Star game. Now, he's finally doing it because fans are coming around to this guy, Austin Riley. Fans are voting. That's essentially what it is. I hate to call it a popularity contest. I hate to call it that because it is the All-Star game. But fans are voting. They're voting for their favorites. And we're all coming around back to Ozuna right now, but also realize fans are voting. That's what I'm going to leave it with. Fans are voting. Chris Kaysen says it would be wild to see our Braves first baseman to start the All-Star game over Freeman. I'm sure they'll both be professional about it. They're top-tier caliber guys in their behavior. Yeah, they'll be professional about it. I'm not worried about that. It would be kind of weird to see in a way, but also kind of good to see in a way because it's like, hey, at least we got a guy that can be competitive with Freeman. That's really what the goal was. It wasn't to, I hate to say it wasn't to find someone just better than Freeman. I don't think that was the goal. I think the goal was to find someone who can fill those shoes accordingly. Olsen's the guy. They're very different hitters. They're very different styles of hitters. Olsen is a long ball guy. Don't know if you've caught on to that or not. Freeman's not. He can be, but he's not just. And I'm not saying Olsen is just a long ball guy, but Olsen is an extra base hit guy. That's who he is. Freeman is an average guy. He gets on base. He does what needs to be done. And I think they're just different players. They're both great defensively. And, when it comes to who's in the All-Star game, it's a fan vote. We'll see what happens. So if whoever you want in there, go vote. We'll see what happens. Guys, do remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay updated with everything going on here at On Deck and, of course, with your Atlanta Braves. Also, please be reminded to go check out the On Deck shop. We have all kinds of stuff there. We have stickers, we have hats, we have hoodies, we have shirts, we have water bottles. We have all kinds of stuff. Everything you need with an On Deck logo plus some. Go check it out. We have pennants. We have, again, hoodies, jackets, whatever. The QR code is on your screen right down there. Go get you one of these On Deck hats. They are out there, and guys, I want to see these at the ballpark, okay? If you're there on Sunday, wear your On Deck gear because I'm wearing mine. Make sure to wear yours. I would really love to see it and would love to get a picture with some of you guys wearing an On Deck hat or whatever merchandise you want to wear. Really would appreciate it. So go check out the On Deck shop. Appreciate it there, Jacob. Anyway, let's get back into what you guys want to talk about real quick. Jorge says, can we talk about the Amazons and their amazing June stretch? Yeah, I think we already kind of talked about it. I pulled up that newspaper article, but I don't mind doing it again. The worst half money can buy. Yeah, they're 11 games back, if I remember correctly. It's been rough for the Mets, but I couldn't tell you that I didn't see it coming. I did. Before the season started, I had written in the office, at work, actually, we have a resident Mets fan there, and I wrote out Mets, Scherzer, Verlander, $82 million, okay? And then I wrote down the Braves roster and their payroll. Now, some contracts have changed since then, but I basically was saying this is what I could buy with just this $82 million. And it was, granted, some people have moved around since then, but it was Contreras, it was Olsen, it was Riley, it was Fried, it was Soroka, it was anybody you could have thought of. The entire infield. Arcia, even Swanson when he was still there. Acuna, Albies. It was everybody. Rosario. I can buy the whole infield, outfield, plus the catching core for that $82 million. It's just not money well spent. And you're spending it on two 40-year-olds past their prime? I know Verlander had a great year last year. It just doesn't make sense to me. And it still doesn't. So, not to say I couldn't see it coming because I could, but like I've said before, you just can't buy chemistry. Let's see. Oren Griswold, the Yankees being number 21 in payroll is very surprising to me. Yeah, but again, they're getting to the point where they even realize, hey, just because we spend the money, this isn't the 80s. Just because we're giving Reggie Jackson $3 million doesn't mean we're going to be the best team in baseball. It doesn't work like that anymore. You have to raise your own players, and I think the Yankees are getting better at that. But you have to raise your own players. You have to have a core. You have to have depth. That does not come with just free agent picking. It doesn't. It just doesn't. You have to raise some up and then get as necessary. And the thing about it is the Braves have been doing this for a long time. In the 90s, they had a core, and then they went out and got Greg Maddux, and then they went out and got Fred McGriff. They got what they needed to add on to their core, but the core was always there. It was always there. And that's essentially what's happening now. Granted, some pieces have left, Freeman and Dansby and whoever, but we've been able to bring them back because we have Acuna, Albies, Riley. We have those guys, and they're not going anywhere. We're signed long-term. Those are the guys you sign to big deals. And the fact that we're not signing them to $400 million is just icing on the cake. We're signing them to deals that make sense. And the reason that we get to sign these guys, I know a lot of Mets fans wonder, how in the world do they get to sign Austin Riley for 10 years, $20 million a year? How do they get to do that? Well, it's because the Braves are a destination place. The guy earlier, Matthew, was talking about Shohei Ohtani wanting to be with this young team core. I don't know the truth behind that. I don't know if it is true. But if that's the case, it's because these guys are here to win. The environment is right. And, we'll see what happens. Yeah. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it. Blake says Edwin Diaz was the reason that the East was close last year. The Mets lost 0 games, winning after the 8th inning last year, while the Braves did over 20. I think there's some truth to that. The bullpen was much more shaky last year. Now, granted, they've been shaky themselves this year, but they were a little shaky last year. And Edwin Diaz, all credit to him, was locked down. But the Mets have had a number of problems. Number one, their offense hasn't exactly been great, which it wasn't terrific last year. They had a lot of, I'll say it, they had a lot of lucky hits. If you, there's one stat that I know that the Mets excelled at last year, it was BABIP, batting average on balls in play. And if you don't believe me, go look at that game Spencer Strider pitch where he was just ticked because he knew they should have been outs, right? And I'm not saying that the Mets shouldn't have won. I'm just saying it turned out in their favor. But, you just can't buy chemistry. I'll say it again. You can't buy chemistry. Tyler, did you see the Phillies announcers complain that Ozuna... Thank you for bringing this up. Tyler, did you see the Phillies announcers complained that Ozuna stopped for less than 2 seconds to give Wash a high five down the third baseline after a homer? They called Ron Washington unprofessional. What? ? I am so glad you brought this up. So here's my take on that. Number one, I've met Ron Washington. The most professional baseball man I think I've ever met. Jacob, would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. The most professional. The amount of care he has for the game, the amount of passion he has for the game, the fact that he's been in the game for 40 plus years, there is no unprofessionalism in Ron Washington, okay? I'm just going to say that right now to you. There is no unprofessionalism in Ron Washington. Now, that said, let's talk about Ozuna stopping for a high five or whatever. There is still an old crowd out there that doesn't like the bat flips or whatever the case may be or whatever, right? I'm kind of past that conversation. I think it's a conversation of the past. I don't think it belongs in today's talk. In terms of him stopping and doing that, he's been doing very similar things for a number of years. Anybody remember him taking selfies? I mean, this isn't new. That was my first thought on it, but also... the high five you have a problem with, they treated it like he moonwalked over the plate, and I just didn't think it was that serious. It honestly was kind of sad. And I say that with all due respect to whoever was broadcasting the game, it was just kind of sad, right? Because if I'm a Phillies fan, I'm looking at going, yeah, I don't love it that he's doing this, but it's also dude, he hit a homer, it is what it is. I just thought it was kind of overdramatic more than anything. But that was my take on that. Let's see. The Battery says, what does this list look like if you include which team is investing in the minors? That is, with regards to instruction, infrastructure, rehabilitation, etc. It's funny you mentioned that. He's, of course, talking about the payroll. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. I just kind of put this out there. But I can get more research on it. Here's what I will tell you and what I can say. I do know that the Yankees are investing a lot into their minors, hence why I think they're number 21 on this list. That being said, the Pirates have a young core. I think they're investing in their future. The A's are naturally where they are. The Orioles have a young core. They're investing in their future. The Rays are always where they are right now. They just have a knack for staying in the playoffs. The Reds are another team that's investing in their core. The Nationals are obviously rebuilding. The Royals are rebuilding. The Marlins, they're kind of in that rebuild stage too, but they have a young core. They're kind of where the Braves were in 2018. But that's what I would say. The D-backs are another one. When you look at those top 10, they don't have a ton investing in the minors. It is kind of a flow, right? So the Mets don't have a ton in the minors. The Padres don't have a ton in the minors. All their guys are in the majors. Phillies, I don't believe, have a ton in the minors. The Dodgers have a recurring minor league system. They have a great minor league system. Angels, I don't know what the Angels are doing, if I'm honest with you. The Blue Jays, they do have a young core, but they also have guys that are established. The Braves, they're for winning right now. They have what they want right now. The Rangers are trying to compete right now. Astros trying to compete right now. Giants, I think, are about to start a rebuild. They got to cut some losses here and there. And then, of course, the guys that are in the middle of the road are primarily in that middle row. But I think that ultimately what you're saying is how many of these guys that aren't spending money on the payroll are investing in the minor leagues, and I think a lot of them are in that 21 to 30 slot. I really do. And some of them aren't. Some of them, Rays are competing right now, the best record in baseball, but they're just an outlier. I think the majority of the teams are really that are in that 21 to 30 are either rebuilding or should be rebuilding. And that's what I want you to take away from that is if you're in that low payroll and you're not successful, you should be focusing on your minor leagues, not saying, okay, let's go spend more money and bring in all these guys and just plug and play. It doesn't work that way. Take it from me, take it from the Mets, take it from the Phillies. It does not work that way, not long term. And the Phillies, I'll tell you this, the Phillies, and I know I've talked a lot about the Mets tonight. The Phillies, I think, stick out to me primarily because the defense in the outfield. And I know Bryce Harper's hurt. I'll give him that. But Kyle Schwarber, you remember that play when we faced the Phillies the other day? Kyle Schwarber should have made that catch. Do you know what I'm talking about? That's the kind of thing you lose when you put DHs in the outfield. And if you're like, hey, Tyler, DHs, what are you talking? Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos. Great bats. Castellanos kind of had a rough year last year. But DHs in the outfield. Great bats, not great fielders. And luckily for the Braves, you have pretty good fielder and Eddie Rosario in left for the majority of the time, maybe a Sam Hilliard here and there. You have Michael Harris II, who did not have a great start to the year. Is hitting great now, but did not have a great start to the year. But one thing that never slacks with Michael Harris is defense. And that's the benefit you get. Ronald Acuna, same thing. Even if he's slumping at the plate, he's going to give you good defense. And that's, I think, one of the biggest issues with the Phillies. At least that's my opinion. We have a super chat. Of course, super chats do get you priority. This was from my good buddy Jonathan Roberson. Allard over Soroka. I wonder what the thinking is of that, considering how well Soroka has pitched in Gwinnett. Yeah, not sure why. Really not, honestly, not sure why. I haven't done the digging on it, Jonathan. Thanks for the super chat, by the way. When it comes to Soroka, I think, and I've said this before, I think they just want to be sure, right? They've already wasted an option on him coming up and back down. They've already done that. I don't know that they want to risk it again until they are just for certain this is what we're going to do. And being that they have a 6.5 game lead, one game's not going to kill them. They get freed and right back, after the All-Star break. I think it's just a combination of those elements where they're like, we can afford not to take this risk, right? Back then you were hoping, okay, we're going to bring Soroka up. He's going to light the world on fire and be good until the All-Star break at least, and then we'll, reassess. I think that's kind of where they are. But, we'll see. That's kind of my take on it. I wish I could give you a more in-depth answer, but that's kind of my take on it right now. Guys, please do remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on here on deck. And, of course, with your Atlanta Braves, don't forget to check out the On Deck shop. Really would appreciate you taking a look at the collection there, and we will be adding more here pretty soon. So make sure if you haven't got the stuff now, you get it, and look forward to the stuff coming up. Johnny T with the super chat. Sorry, I just saw it. He says, start, bench, cut. Oh, this is a random one. Pedro, Maddox, and Johnson. Man, what am I supposed to do with that? I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to start Maddox. Jacob's looking at me crazy. He's going to have a different opinion on it. I'm going to bench Johnson, and I'm going to cut Pedro, which I don't love. I don't love it, but there's not a good option in this list. There's not. I'm going to tell you why. I have a reason. I can get Maddox to go 6+ easy, okay? The guy threw, a 79 pitch inning or whatever?
76, something like that.
I can get it, or 79 pitch complete game, sorry. 79 pitch inning would have been just as interesting. Anyway, I know I can get 6+ out of Maddox. Johnson can fill the rest, okay? If there's a closer in baseball that could have been, or a starting pitcher that could have been a closer, I'll go Randy Johnson. You can disagree with me all you want. I know you love Pedro, so do I. That's what I'm going with. All right, so if you disagree with me, sorry, take it out in the comments. Anyway, let's see. Trip Block says, I'm ready for the Tampa Bay series. Jacob, see when the Tampa Bay series starts. I'm ready for it, too. I wish I was going to be there, but Maybe I am. We'll see. I haven't really looked too far ahead of it, but we'll see when it starts, and maybe we can go from there. But no, I think it's going to be a great series, and there are two division leaders. There's one team that's leading the AL in record, and one team's leading the NL with their record. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it too. Let's see. Matthew says, Tyler, there is no way the Yankees' payroll is only $108 million. I heard only the Mets are higher than the Yanks. Padres are third. Are you sure that the Yankees figure is right? They paid Judge and Cole $76 million alone. Well, the intern Jacob actually looked up those figures, but I'm pretty sure they're correct. I'll give it. Jacob says he's not sure.
The list you're looking at is kind of.
All right, well, I'll look it up because obviously Jacob cannot be trusted. I'll look it up.
I think it has something to do with injuries. I don't know.
The active payroll is 184.
Yeah, that's also not right.
Okay, that's according to Spot Track. I don't know. We'll look it up. We'll adjust the chart. I doubt we'll ever use it again, but we'll adjust the chart. Sorry about that if we made it, but
Tampa starts on July 7th.
Tampa starts on July 7th. Maybe we'll be there. Probably not. Let's see. The Albies Arcia Place summarizes how good the times are for the Braves right now. Yeah, okay. I don't know what play specifically you're talking about, but I'm gonna just take it and put it in the back pocket. Oh man, you're gonna make me say this. Georgia Bulldogs rule says, Tyler, there are a lot of memes saying the AA is being way too cheap financially because we all know Ronnie is worth way more than $100 million for 8 seasons. $100 million for 10 seasons, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's making $10 million a year. So it's even less. Is that right?
It's with options.
With options, okay. Either way, I think we all know he's worth more than that, but I also think Acuna, number one, signed the deal. He did. He didn't have to. Max Fried hasn't yet, so just take that into consideration. He got guaranteed money up front, and in terms of AA being cheap, you can call it what you want. I call it success, and I call it repeatable success. And that's the thing, right? Like a lot of teams can put, a lot of organizations, let me rephrase, can put teams together to be successful for a season, right? A lot of organizations can do that. The Braves have been able to do it year after year. This is what? They won 6 straight NL East championships, is that right? 18. Or titles? Yeah, 18 on, so 5. So they're working on 6, whatever it is. Year after year after year after year, World Series, NLDSs, NLCSs, they've been there. A lot of other teams can't say that. There's no other team with that streak right now active. Not to mention the 14 straight. So just keep that in mind. They get to do it year after year, in large part due to those types of deals. And I think Riley's worth more than what he's making. I think Olson's worth more than what he's making. Murphy's worth more than what he's making. Fried is certainly worth more than what he's making. So you could say that, but again, because they're making that, they are able to win. And so the memes are out there. I get it. But by my calculations, personally, and you can call that for what you will, I don't think there is a better general manager out there than Alex Anthopoulos. And I can point to multiple things. I can point to what I just said, the repeated success. I can point to the fact that 2021 trade deadline by itself was phenomenal, and if you don't think that was done by him, you're mistaken. There are a number of things, but there is not a guy who is more responsible with the money he's given than Alex Anthopoulos. And if you really want to know how bad things can get, and what I would do if I saw this meme and it's somebody you know and you just want to respond with something, screenshot this and show it to them, because this is how things could be. That would be my response. So I'm going to give you a couple more seconds. Go ahead and screenshot it and respond with that. That's what I would say. That's me, though. So that's what I would say. Money does not always mean success. It just doesn't. Not spending money doesn't always mean success, but spending it certainly does not mean you're guaranteed success. Yeah, Jorge says Ohtani is not coming to the Braves. Said he'll get at least $600 million. Yeah. If you think the Braves are paying that, I hate to break it to you, it's just not going to happen. That would be more than the entire roster, probably. I think that would be greater than anything. Let's see. Bradford says, The thing with signing Ohtani is he himself generates revenue. Yes, he's a huge commitment, but the Japanese fan market media contracts open up to signing him also. I get that, but I also don't think it brings back what you're putting in necessarily. And don't forget, guys, baseball is a business. It is a business first and foremost. When you go to the games, you buy tickets, you buy jerseys that are overpriced, you buy shirts that are overpriced, hoodies that are overpriced, hats that are overpriced. But you know what? You know where those hoodies aren't overpriced? Shop on Deck. Anyway, you buy all this stuff. You buy food that's overpriced, drinks that are overpriced, all to generate revenue for the organization. Okay? The reason I say that, if you put $60 million a year into one player, right? Yeah, you're going to get the revenue from the ticket sales and the jerseys and that kind of thing. But the Braves already have that. They don't need that. The Angels need that, right? That's what's bringing in people to sell out the park for the Angels is when Ohtani starts, okay? The Brewers could use it. The Orioles could use it. Teams like that could use it. But in terms of a business sense, it's just not feasible for Atlanta. They already sell out the park every night. You can't generate any more money other than jersey sales. At least that's my take on it. Bo Hunter says, I 100% agree that I've been saying for a couple weeks this might be the best Braves team I've seen. With that said, I keep telling the family they're going to break our hearts. Don't say that, okay? I know Morgan Wallen's got that song out right now, 98 Braves. Don't say that. They have a very good chance of winning, and just even if they don't win it all, they're a very good team, and I think they're going to go a long ways in the postseason. Let's see. A lot of talk about Ohtani tonight. Oh, okay, so Ohtani hit a home run last night. He leads now with 26. Did not know that. Thank you for that. Let's see. A lot of you guys active tonight. I'm going to skip down a little bit. Deborah Quarles, you're a new commenter. Let's see what you got to say. It's about Ozuna. You say Ozuna was in the vote for left field, not DH. That's why Travis is third in DH voting. JL says Ozuna has been clutch. Here's the thing about Ozuna, right? In terms of the All-Star voting and not being in left field or being in left field for whatever reason, he hadn't played one inning in left field, I don't believe. But he is listed as an outfielder. He is a former Gold Glover, so there is that to take into consideration. But I think we all know that that's kind of out of the picture now. But Ozuna has been a very good breath of fresh air lately, right? He's more along the lines of what we hoped for. And that's all you can really ask for is to be the player that you're supposed to be. He's been great, and hopefully it'll continue. I really hope that's the case. I hope he turns into 2020 Ozuna for the playoffs. That's what I really would like to see. Chris Kaysen says, I have the feeling Shoemake would be the first out the door in a trade if we're giving away a good defensive player with a decent bat. I don't see the Braves letting go of Grissom before Shoemake. I don't disagree with that necessarily. I think they both could be gone if you can get solid bullpen help. Look at what Chapman's doing this year. He's kind of back to where he needs to be. He's had a pretty good year so far. The Royals have not had a pretty good year so far as a whole. That said, if you can get Chapman for Shoemake and Vaughn Grissom, I think you take it, especially considering how Orlando Arcia has done. What?
Ozuna has 2 games in left field this year.
Ozuna has 2 games in left field. Forgive me. Maybe that's why he's listed as left fielder. Anyway, but yeah, if you can get Chapman for Braden Shoemake and Vaughn Grissom, I think you take it. I think you take it for any solid reliever. I think you should take it because that's the need for the Braves right now. Prospects at shortstop isn't really a need anymore. It's just not. You have a guy locked up for 3 years in Orlando Arcia, and you have these 2 prospects who are sitting and waiting. And there's something to be said for sitting and waiting, but I don't think they're going to get any more tradable than this trade deadline. I don't. And if you don't believe me, Jacob's making a face. The reason I say that, if you don't believe me, look at Christian Pache. Look at him a few years ago. There was a time where if we had traded him, we could have got a lot back. We chose not to. It aged. He never grew any better. He's now actually starting center fielder for the Nationals? For the Phillies. Wow. Okay. I knew it was one of them. But the bat's still not there. The fielding is, but the bat's still not there. He never grew past it. And we didn't stick around with him. And we traded him later, but we didn't trade him for very much. We did trade him for Olsen, but we had to throw in Langoliers. There was a time where we could have got him for just one. That said, I'm saying I don't think there is another time where this is going to be, where these two guys are going to get more for your money. And one of them is going to have to go to one team, the other will have to go to the other. But we'll see how it goes. I think this trade deadline, one of them at least is gone. There's not a spot for two of them. Maybe one. I don't think there's one for two. That said, let's see. On the go with CeeLo says, "What's up, Tyler? I think we can get Chapman from Kansas City." I asked the chat tonight in our stream, what's your thoughts? I kind of just laid it out. I think if you trade those two, I think you can land him because the Royals definitely are going to be rebuilding soon. I mean, they're not having a great year, and ultimately, when you look at the payroll, I think they're in a rebuild state. That's kind of my take on it. Soccer J says, "My buddy had this take, which is Chipper Jones is the second best third baseman. However, how do you feel about this?" I would be curious to know his number one. My brother's laughing because we have this argument literally all the time. He knows my take on it. I do not think Chipper Jones is the greatest of all time. I don't. I'd like to know who he thinks is. I think there's a few that kind of... Jacob, stop. I think there's a few that kind of you can circle at the top of the list. Brooks Robinson is one. He has the most Gold Gloves at that position. You can talk about Mike Schmidt. Beltray. You can talk about a number of guys that are at the top of that list. I'm waiting on Soccer J to tell me who number one is. Do I think Chipper Jones is a solid number two? You can make the argument. There's Eddie Murray. There's Cal Ripken, who's a shortstop, I know, but he also played third base. A-Rod played a lot of third base. You can talk about a lot of guys. He's certainly, for my money, the best switch-hitting third baseman. Eddie Matthews is one that I think you have to consider. What's so funny?
Because Eddie Matthews is the greatest.
Jacob thinks Eddie Matthews is the greatest of all time.
History.
I think it's really subjective. If he's your favorite, there's nothing wrong with that. He's certainly mine, okay? But I also think, Jacob, you got to stop. Sorry. I also think that it's all in your opinion, really, because the stats don't translate over the years. They don't. And you can look at the WAR from 1950, whatever, but it's never going to mean the same. It just isn't. They don't translate year to year. So it's really all about your generation, who you watched, and that kind of thing. For me, I grew up watching Chipper Jones. And that's where I feel on it. I don't think, historically speaking, you can say he's the greatest of all time. I truly don't. I think he is the greatest Atlanta Brave of all time. I do. I don't think there's an argument. You can talk to me about Hank Aaron, I get it, but he had time at Milwaukee and Braves. That's how I separate it in my mind. But I think Chipper is single-handedly the greatest Atlanta Brave of all time. He has the best stats for any Atlanta Brave of all time. Most of Hank's stats are in Milwaukee, most of them. Now, that said, there's a lot of third basemen in history, a ton. And we can go through it, but somebody's going to disagree. It's never going to be... Arguably, my brother is going to disagree no matter what I say. So you can name them, you can say them, but it's really all about who you watched. And I watched Chipper Jones. I think Andrew Jones is one of the greatest center fielders of all time. I never had the pleasure of sitting and watching Willie Mays play a game. Not live, not in person, not any of that. I got to see Andrew. I saw what he was capable of. I saw what Chipper was capable of. I think Randy Johnson is one of the greatest, fastballers of all time. But I never saw, Walter Johnson. I never saw, whoever. I think you can talk. There's a number of things you could say. I think Mariano Rivera could be considered the greatest closer of all time, right? Could be considered. I say that because there are other guys that you could consider. Billy Wagner is one that I will point out. But those arguments are meant to happen, right? Who's the greatest starting pitcher of all time? Go ahead, give me your answer, right? There's about 10 that everybody kind of says this is in the conversation, but it's all about who you liked, right? You can say Sandy Koufax. I could say he only had a prime of about 5 years. You could say Nolan Ryan. I could say he never won a Cy Young. He should have, but I could say that, right? It's all about what you think, right? It's your opinion. So for me, who do I think is the greatest third baseman of all time? I think it's up to you. That's what I think. For me, I grew up watching Chipper. That's the guy who I think made me like baseball in a lot of ways. So naturally, I would say my favorite is Chipper, but greatest of all time, I don't think so. I just don't think so. I think there are other guys that had better primes, better, long-lasting careers, were better when they got older, had won more championships, whatever the case may be. But everybody's unique. I mean, you show me another third baseman that hits as well on the left side as he does on the right and has, 400-plus homers, whatever the case may be. It's a unique thing. Nobody's like Adrian Beltre. He was a unique player in himself. No one is like Mike Schmidt. No one is like George Brett. No one is like A-Rod. No one is like, whatever the case may be. Everybody's unique. Everybody, as a fan, has an opinion. So that's mine. That's where I'm going to leave it. A lot of comments now about Chipper in the chat. Thank you to whoever started that. I really do appreciate it. Jake Hobby, thank you for that. Says, that's what siblings are for, to argue with. Me and Jacob, I wish I could turn the camera on him because it would embarrass him. Me and Jacob argue more than normal about baseball. Okay, we have very different opinions about anything. It doesn't matter what it is, and we will stick to it. We will argue. We will have an opinion, and I will give Jacob credit. Jacob is much better than me because he's a nerd. He'll go through, baseball reference, and he'll have a stat ready for me. He will start an argument knowing what I'll say, and then go, oh, yeah? Well, what about this? That's what he does, right? He's great at that. But that's who he is. And to his credit, he's great at it. But we argue about this literally all the time. Stuff like this. So what I will say is I'm better than him at MLB The Show. And I don't mind rubbing that in. He can't beat me, and I'll stick with that. So for anybody out there that's wondering, hey, why am I watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond and not On Deck with Jacob Redmond, just know that. I am better than him at MLB The Show, and he knows it's true. That said, I think we're going to wrap it up here pretty soon. Derek Smith says, Jacob sounds like a lawyer. I'm going to have to bring Jacob in here more often. It seems to bring in more views. Guys, do me a favor. We'll answer a couple more questions. If you have a super chat last minute, I will answer it. Also, just please make sure to like the video on the way out if you've enjoyed the stream. Please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And, of course, do also hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything we're doing, stay up to date with everything the Braves are doing, and, of course, just everything going on in Major League Baseball. We really would appreciate it. We have Philly Sports Talk podcast just tuned in. He says, what's up? I've talked a lot about the Phillies tonight, so I hope you're not offended. I didn't say anything bad, nothing bad, just pointing out the facts. But what's up, Philly Talk Sportscast or Talk Podcast? If you're a Phillies fan, go check them out, I guess. Thank you for tuning in, but we are about to wrap things up. With that, again, thank you. Make sure to go check out the On Deck Shop. The QR code is on the screen. Follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram. That is down below. And, of course, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on here on Deck. And, of course, all across Major League Baseball. We'll see you next time right here at On Deck.
Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support. Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support.